Have you ever had an idea that felt like it was literally burning a hole in your brain? Like it was just waiting to burst out onto the page? Well, today, we're going to explore exactly what that feels like. Welcome to this explainer, where we're diving into a single, frankly breathtaking illustration that mashes up the rigid science of geology with the raw, untamed power of storytelling. Let's get right into it. Okay, take a second to really let your eyes wander across this whole landscape. We're embarking on a bit of a metaphorical journey here, starting all the way up at that explosive peak right in the center, and then traveling down to the glowing river of ink and lava at the bottom. It's an absolutely stunning visual metaphor, and we're going to break down exactly how this artist illustrates the act of creation as basically a seismic event. Section 1. The literary landscape, where mountains are made of manuscripts. So notice how the artist brilliantly maps out this comparison. They take things we know from earth science and flip them into literal literary elements. The central volcano, it becomes a bounded book, complete with a thick, leather-like spine that looks kind of like shifting tectonic plates. The dangerous, glowing magma turns into flowing ink bleeding onto the pages. And the ash and steam, they actually manifest as floating punctuation marks. It's just such a cool, fascinating way to map out the geography of human imagination. Now, the really crucial point here is the title stamped right there on the cracked spine of that central mountain, Volcanus. In the context of this artwork, that word defines way more than just a mountain. It's a narrative pressure cooker. It's a massive, bounded book that simply cannot contain the explosive power of its own story anymore. I mean, the pressure of the ideas inside has built up so intensely that the cover has literally ruptured and the pages have burst wide open just to release the tension. And you can see that eruption perfectly right here. Look at the top of the central book. The smoke and ash billowing up into the sky. Those aren't your standard fluffy gray clouds. Actually, look closer. They're actual punctuation marks. You can clearly spot giant question marks and exclamation points just being hurled right out of the crater. Think about what that represents for a creator. It's the sudden questions, the epiphanies, the sheer exclamation point excitement that bursts out when a story finally breaks free. Moving on to Section 2, Decoding Volcanic Texts, Reading the Ash and Magma. Floating in the sky and printed super heavily on the left-hand page, we get this pseudo-Latin phrase, E terra erupit. This loosely translates to, and the earth erupted. By dropping in this classical-sounding text, the artist is giving the whole scene this mythic, historical weight. It hints that the earth is physically bursting open with the narrative. The story isn't just happening on the landscape, you know? The story literally is the landscape. Now, right underneath that Latin phrase, catch this smaller caption hovering directly over the cracked paper terrain. The ash and steam of volcanic process, signifying an espatio. So it is literally labeling the creative eruption we're looking at, almost like it's a scientific diagram in an earth science textbook. It anchors this wild, surreal dreamscape back into something analytical, kind of playfully daring us to study inspiration like it's a hard science. Let's shift our attention across to the right-hand pages. Another prominent phrase pops up, magma fluid, or magma flows. This text physically sits right beside the rushing lava, confirming that what's pouring out of this book isn't just molten rock. No, it is the very lifeblood of the story. It's the raw material, the hot, unformed ink that's eventually going to cool down and form the paragraphs, the chapters, and the sequels of this newly born world. And check out how the text wraps around those beautifully drawn houses and winding paths. If you look really closely at the line work on the open book pages, you'll see fragmented words like Pareli and Gloppy just surrounding these tiny, quaint little settlements. The artist is completely integrating the written words right into the physical, inhabitable world. It gives the whole thing an almost medieval map-like quality, totally blurring the line between typography and topography. All right, Section 3, the living alphabet, the workers of the narrative. So looking down at the base of the lava flow, we really have to ask ourselves a vital question about all this chaos of creation. Who is cleaning up this narrative? Because let's be real, when a massive idea explodes out of your head, it is rarely neat and tidy. It's a complete mess. Someone or something has to wrangle that fiery inspiration into an actual structured shape. Which brings us to these absolutely fantastic little details. The living alphabet workers. They are literally made up of individual letters. We can clearly spot an A, an E, a P, and an R, and they've got these tiny little stick arms, legs, and incredibly expressive, almost panicked little faces. Notice how they're frantically running around carrying small blue buckets, waiting right there on the dangerous edge of the glowing magma and those messy pools of black ink. Just observe these little characters right here on the edge in this close-up. They inject this surprising sense of scale and honestly a really delightful touch of gentle humor into what is otherwise an overwhelming fiery landscape. Are they trying to contain this massive story with those tiny, totally inadequate blue buckets? Or maybe they're the editors of this world, desperately scooping up the raw ink to build sentences before the whole thing cools down. It just perfectly captures that frantic, sometimes futile feeling energy of trying to edit a raw, explosive first draft. Which leads us to Section 4, Eruption as Creative Process, the flow of ink and fire. The visual tension here is honestly just fantastic. On this wide view, look at the stark contrast between the bright, destructive orange lava river flowing right down the center and those thick, messy, scattered black ink splats pooling on the left-hand page. It perfectly captures the volatile nature of writing. Meaningful creation isn't just about putting neat words in a row on a pristine white document. Sometimes it's about letting the volcano erupt, making a massive mess on the page, and just trusting that the landscape is going to be more beautiful once the smoke clears. So to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Take one last mental image of Vulcanus here. Ultimately, is storytelling a destructive eruption that tears the blank page apart? Or is it a profoundly creative force that builds entirely new, livable worlds from the leftover ink and ash? The sheer brilliance of this illustration is that it shows us it absolutely has to be both. Thanks so much for joining me to decode this incredible piece. And hey, I hope it leaves you inspired to let your own ideas finally erupt.